Good morning, greetings from Costa Rica. Welcome to Costa Rica Expat FAQ. My name is Matt Rosensteel and today I'm joined by
Gabriel Chaves.
Gabriel Chaves of P&D Lawyers here in Tamarindo, Guanacaste. Today we're talking about the history of the Guanacaste real estate market, the history of the Costa Rica real estate market, trying to get a context for where we stand right now. We're right in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, witnessing the fallout of what is another major market change. So a lot of clients are writing and saying, Matt, what's happening in the Costa Rica real estate market? And somebody who has an unlimited amount of experience in this arena is Don Gabriel. Gabriel is the attorney that I work with when I'm able to for handling real estate transactions. He and I now have been working together for several years on a variety of different transactions, so I'm extremely excited to finally get him here for some of his input. Today we'll be looking at a few topics, really just sort of thinking about the real estate market here, the past, present, and future. No one knows where this thing is headed and where we're going, but I do think there are lessons to be learned from where we've been. And really that the best thing that people can do right now is understand the context, the history behind it, to try and make their own evaluation of where we're going from here. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at matt@cbtamarindo.com. That'll be in the description as well as my other contact information. First, I would like Gabriel to touch on briefly your career here in Tamarindo so that people understand what your perspective has been shaped by.
Well, Matt, thank you for having me here. I'm happy and excited to share my experience with you. It's really interesting because you brought the topic about what's happening, and to understand what's happening, the experience that we have had for the last 20 years in the area can put us in a good position to understand how we see things moving forward. So just as a brief explanation of the history of P&D Lawyers and me being here, my idea of being from the Central Valley in San Jose was always to move down to Costa Rica, to the coastline in Guanacaste, and to open my office here. So that was at the end of the 1990s, the beginning of 2000, where basically I moved, opened the first office here. It was a whole different story. It was a small surfers town. Basically, it was almost impossible to get a phone line. I remember that a phone line was $1,000 and you have to have contacts in order to get a phone line, because there was not an ability to open a real office. There was no internet. It was very slow internet. Banco Nacional was just opening, and it was a whole different market. But
you were coming out here to Tamarindo and you opened P&D Lawyers, not necessarily in this space, but in 2000 you started the firm.
It was almost impossible to find an office. There was it was a small town. It was impossible to find an office. I scouted the area for quite some time, opened a first office. It was a little small office, and it was hard. It was not an easy task, but it was a small town. It was slow.
Yep.
So it was okay. The idea of moving down here was to surf and to have my little office. So it was really good at the beginning until the market started moving.
Yeah. And let's touch on that. So, really, what's important for me, I came here in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
You saw 8 years prior to that a huge change in the area starting in 2000. Could you touch on briefly the history of the area and sort of from 2000 until now, that little sleepy town where no phone lines, no offices, this real estate market in general, what's happened?
Well, it's really important to touch this, because I think that puts us in perspective of where we are now and what to expect. So basically, in the early 2000s, the world market started changing in terms of people were having much more money to invest. As we all remember, the loans in the States were just booming everywhere, the subprime, all of this market scenario. So most of our clients coming from the US had a bunch of money. Banks were giving loans like, easy to come and invest. So what was happening was people were getting second or third degree mortgages over their properties back home and bringing all the money here and investing. So the important part was that it was so easy to invest in Costa Rica, especially in our coast area, because everything was projects. We were, there was every little plot of land in Tamarindo had a design, new construction, new condominium, new everything. We had lots of, projects planned for the area.
Mm-hmm. And what was driving that new development, creating all these projects? Was it the availability of free money in the US, you think?
Basically, that was a lot of the buyers at that point of time were not really focusing on moving down and living here. They were most focusing in investing and making a profit.
Yep.
So we call that time the speculation time. Like there was a lot of the buyers were a lot of speculating about their investment. And in fact, the first years, there was a real interesting movement of properties in paper. Like there was all of these future projects coming. The owner of the land designed a project and started selling in paper. That first contract got sold one time, then the buyer put it in 30% more and it got sold. By the end, when the first projects ended up being completed, there was like the fourth buyer was ending to buy on 2 times more than the actual starting point.
Yeah, I've heard stories of that there were investors even calling their brokers, agents that they had available here and landing money in the country and saying, get me anything you can, and sort of trying to just resell as soon as they could see an increase in value.
It was the Wild West in terms of the market. Everything was for sale. The prices were just jumping forward. The interesting part was that most of it was in paper because the Costa Rican infrastructure, especially in our coastal area at that point of time, was basically very minimum. We honestly, looking back, there was not an option that those things would have happened. Water was not there, roads were not there, manpower was not there. But when you review the market, all of a sudden we had a Cancun in our area, which again, nobody wanted that.
No.
Our paradise was not that, and people came here and design all of these potential projects, and it was not at all what we were expecting to have.
Yeah, you can imagine, that percentage of potential projects you still see today. There are all kinds of guardhouses, 100 meters of road, people who say, okay, we've got 20 lots cut out, 15 lots cut out, 40, and there's nothing. There might be a couple houses back in there, but it didn't all come to fruition. Obviously, there was the huge crash in 2008. I was looking back at some of the history to prepare, and Lehman Brothers in 2008 was in September. And then really from late September of 2008 until 2009 came the worst of the financial crash. So what happened as a result of that? And how did you see things change all of a sudden in the area when we entered that crash?
Well, it's really interesting because the crisis came to put a halt into the speculator market. It basically stopped all of this those projects in paper, and said, no, there's no way, there's no more cash, there's no more money. So people ended up having properties that were designed to build big condos, big developments without having any buyer and without having any cash to invest on the actual infrastructure to create this project. So it was a time where people, especially U.S. investors, in order to save their homes or the places that they had mortgages back home, started selling on way lower prices than what they bought for.
Yeah.
So basically, the people with money at that point of time were able to get incredible deals
Uh-huh.
because they had the ability to buy out these people that needed desperately to sell something in Costa Rica, so they were not going to be losing their home back
Yeah.
in the States.
For sure.
So it was a couple of years of deals that were not really. There were one-sided deals. You know, it was a little bit unfortunate because the sellers were just basically trying liquidating. The buyers were excited because they were, you know, getting, you know, really nice properties for very lower lower prices. So what that brought into the new scenario after 2008, let's say 2010 and forward, was that we had way less speculation in the market. The people who bought were people financially in good stance, and they were not really needing to sell.
Yeah.
So they kept the properties, and it's when the market started getting a little healthier.
Yeah.
Because there was no speculation, and we swapped into a new type of market, which basically was more focused into people really wanting to come to enjoy Costa Rica for their living.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when a really important factor came into play, which are the schools. The schools in our area created the ability for a lot of younger families that wanted to have an international experience to be able to come to our area, enjoy, you know, the beach, enjoy, you know, our weather, enjoy the cultural part of the Costa Rican pura vida, raise their kids here. But before the schools, there was that really big problem, you know.
Yeah.
The families couldn't move here. So, you know, around the 2010, all of a sudden the schools, La Paz, Country Day, which ended up being Cria, Educarte, these schools created the ability for a lot of younger families, a lot of them who parents work online due to the new technologies, were able to move down here. And funny story is that a lot of these families came for 1 year. All of a sudden, these families were just deciding to stay.
Yep.
And not only working on the internet, but also creating new jobs, new businesses over here, and created a much more healthy community.
Yeah, and I think especially stable, a community that's looking to be here permanently, invest in Costa Rica, and start their family or raise their kids, not just make some cash and get out.
Change the whole market.
So that sort of brings us to the present now, and I think aside from the schools, there are another of other infrastructure factors that have made the region really, in addition to families, it's now suitable for a lot of people.
The airport, one of the most important parts, along with the schools, was the Liberia airport that was just making a very fast way to get here.
Yep.
And that obviously changed the whole scenario. The people who wanted to come to live here were really not really interested in, you know, a lot of these people actually move back and forth for their jobs. So having the Liberia airport was really a good, fast way to be able to be here with their families, travel back and forth without having to affect all their lives. So that plus tourism, you know, the airport created a much more healthy tourism. And we also had movements in terms of infrastructure, roads, pavement of roads. We have new water projects, which water is always being the guide of the development. Lack of water, no development. New water projects, new development. So those new infrastructures started to go and move forward with the market. So it's really interesting to see the prior 2008 market, which was not counting on infrastructure, not counting on community. It was much more a financial, you know, market just to make money. And then the 2008 and the newer market was much more on a community-based, people really coming to be part of the community. That generated a lot of side businesses, and it started making a healthier market. And at the end is what people came here at the beginning to enjoy. So we were really excited. Things were moving forward in a healthy way.
Yep.
And all of a sudden we get hit with this coronavirus.
Coronavirus. Yeah, absolutely. The biggest factor of what we're facing today, the international travel shutdown, a ton of factors that are going to send us spiraling into a new reality that's obviously going to shift things. To touch on briefly, really looking at the present market, just to ask you one quick question. P&D Lawyers handles a wide variety of real estate transactions. Off the cuff, what percentages of prospective investors, let's say 6 months ago before this happened, in that market, the present scenario, what percentage were families sort of in that young phase looking to move here and raise kids, complete their careers, etc.? What percentage were retirees in the older bracket looking to pass the later stages of life?
Well, it's interesting because both of those investors or people moving down were, let's say, 50-50. Let's say the interesting part of the families is that they create a little bit more of interaction with a lot of the businesses. A lot of the retirees are a little bit, they come and they're a little bit just enjoying peacefully. They are not doing businesses, they're just relaxing. We have lots of them. Plus the families were bringing their parents and moving down, so it was a little bit of a circle,
of a mix.
It was a mix. But yes, retirees, and this we hear all the time, they cannot stand anymore the cold weather, so they basically basically want to move down. So we have lots of retirees coming down. It's coming to one important factor about all of the coronavirus that we're seeing right now, and maybe we can jump a little bit on the perspective of what do we see for the future. As people might know, Costa Rica is doing really good in terms of our social security system. It's a universal social security, so our main government basically controls all the healthcare system, which is the main reason why Costa Rica is doing so good in the coronavirus, attention. So a lot of our clients basically feel very confident to come either with their families or either for retirement, because they feel Costa Rica, even though we're a small country, we're very well prepared for this type of health situations. And obviously coronavirus is not a good thing, but we are hoping that at the end of this really bad scenario that we're facing, Costa Rica is going to stand good, showing that the healthcare system it's able to manage, and investors families and retirees are going to be able to come and feel much more protected over here.
For sure. It's tragic to be talking about, we never would have been talking to prospective clients and saying, well, this is a place with a lower infection rate or a lower mortality rate. That is a factor in people's consideration in the future. Costa Rica took, the national government being 100% in charge of healthcare, did the math and said, we're going to foot the bill for everybody who gets this virus, and immediately said, well, we can't afford to have thousands of cases. They also, I think, knew very much that the virus had to be dealt with before travel can open up again, and the decision was, we need this to end as soon as possible. They were able to peak out the total number of active cases in the country at about 700 or 800. From there, it's been declining. We're at about 300. Continues to tick down, and really internally, they've done a remarkable job. But let me ask, what do you see happening right now? Are you starting to see in this coronavirus, we're 2 months into what you could call the panic or the emotional and market reaction to this? What are you seeing as a property and development firm from your clients? Are sellers calling you up and saying, I need to liquidate? Are buyers calling you up and saying, I need to get out of, this place or that place?
It's really interesting because in comparison to 2008, which because this was a turning point in our market, it was very black and white at that point of time. Sellers needed to sell, they needed to liquidate. It was buyers coming with money ready to invest and get properties for a very discounted price. It was very black and white, but right now it's different. Right now we have sellers that are, remember, we have less speculation. We have sellers that are much more financially stable, so they are not in a desperate need to sell. It's a weird moment for the market, so even buyers with money, they want to buy, but the sellers are not giving it away really easy. Plus, there's a lot of the people who own property here that are not here that would have chosen to be here if they could to run these lockdowns and this pandemic. So a lot of them, they're saying, Gabriel, I just want the borders to be open in order to be able to officially move down as soon as possible.
And come back. We have clients that have not been able to move in or open the door on property. We closed. And I think I'm seeing very much the same thing. There's the buyers calling me up that have money and are anxious because, now's my opportunity. Find me that deal. But at the same time,
we have lots of those.
Lots of those are looking for the deals now, and the sellers aren't coming down, and there's a mismatch where buyers feel that there should be a huge drop in values and everything, and a lot of sellers are saying, I would have rather been in Costa Rica. Now they're considering moving here, retiring even earlier than maybe they own their lot, and now they're pushing that construction project ahead. So Costa Rica, I think, might be a very exceptional case. There are going to be housing price changes in a lot of places, with 30 million unemployed Americans many of them can no longer meet their mortgage payments. Those values are going to be radically changed, but the expat sellers here in Costa Rica who own property, or the developers, I think very much are eyeing the future with that possibility in mind that, yes, Costa Rica has performed very well in this, and it's a place that I want to be during the next lockdown. And so really we're not seeing that cascade of sales, at least from the foreigners. Do you think there are Costa Ricans affected by the crisis who own property here in this area that are going to be really looking to find a buyer now?
I think there's going to be not only Costa Ricans, but also some foreigners who will have specific conditions that will remove them to reduce their prices. Not as in the 2008 where it was almost everyone. Because that type of market, in this one much healthier, we will still see some cases where Costa Ricans who were investing in a little project to sell probably will have mortgages to pay, even though the banks are giving a little bit of a assistance on the mortgage payments, part of the crisis. But I think they might want to liquidate, as well as some owners foreigners who, for their special condition, they might want to liquidate. So we will see those, and we probably will see buyers with the money waiting for those to come in order to be able to get those really good deals, but not as much as in the 2008 crisis. We will see some cases, and basically buyers are really desperate to see those, and they usually don't last long in the market. They really go fast. Those really fire sales, but we don't see as much as in the 2008 crisis. We will probably see less, and we will have to wait a little bit longer for things to move forward with patience. But currently, Costa Rica is showing through our healthcare system that we are being able to control the virus. And that's gonna help put, especially for retirees, I guess, families as well. Families, younger families feel way much comfortable. Not only, and this is really important, not only the health part. I think Costa Rica during this time has shown that cultural and social, it's proven that not only the virus, but the community has, all of the communities have gotten together to help the people who have run out of jobs.
Yeah.
At the beginning of this crisis, I remember everybody was talking like, oh, the insecurity, there's going to be riots, there's going to be everything all over the place. And I told a bunch of my clients, because they were thinking about moving back to their, countries in Europe and the States and everywhere. And I told them, Costa Ricans are not like that.
Yeah.
You don't expect somebody that lost a job in a catamaran tour a company or in a surf shop or on a restaurant to all of a sudden go and break in a house and steal something. These people are not like that.
Yep.
I was proven for the moment to be right, because actually what the opposite happened. There's been a lot of people who are assisting through food banks and through everything to support these families, and everybody is getting together. So socially and culturally, we have been proven to have a very good healthy community and supporting each other. So that's not only the virus, but as well all of that is surrounding the virus itself.
For sure. Sellers have not been motivated because of decaying conditions here.
Mm-hmm.
I love Costa Rica because of that cohesion. There's a really strong sense that the solidarity between different sectors of Costa Rican life is much stronger than what you find in other countries, especially my home country. Places all over the world don't come together nearly as well as Ticos have. I'm extremely glad to have been in this place in the world when this has happened, and I think internationally there will be that recognition that Costa Rica as a small, resilient place for a number of reasons is a wonderful bet for the future if you're trying to hedge against whatever is coming. I got another very interesting perspective before this had all happened from Tony DiMaggio. I'm going to put a little link so that you can get to his interview directly from this YouTube video. For another person, Tony DiMaggio has been here for 30 years. He had given me an interview about sort of the history as well. Feel free to check that out if you're interested in learning more and getting the perspective from before coronavirus. Today, I was grateful to have Gabriel Chaves here from P&D Lawyers. He's got 20 years experience here in Tamarindo handling property and development transactions for people. So your perspective is invaluable, and I'm really glad you were able to share it. Thank you very much for joining us, Don Gabriel, Licenciado.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for watching. We appreciate it. Have a good day. We hope you all stay safe. We look forward to seeing you in Costa Rica as soon as possible. Take care and pura vida.
Pura vida.